You writing back? I thought we had scared you off. So
No. We had a good conversation, John. I appreciated the openness.
No, but you have to remember, I'm a high E like you.
Yes.
I invest heavily in catastrophic thinking.
I've been there.
His heart
many times
dangles from his sleeve daily. I mean,
Yes,
it is right there. You could crush him if you wanted to. So, but I'd recommend you don't.
It does. Yeah. So, believe it or not, podcasting does not necessarily pay the bills around here.
Really?
So yeah. You. Not everybody knows that. Not everybody knows.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Did you know that anybody can have a podcast?
They just let anyone do it. You don't have to get a license or anything.
No. You don't have to prove anything. There's no.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live version of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield.
Yes.
Will, I think we're going to stick with that live thing, at least for now. What do you think?
If you believe it, then let's stick with it. I believe in you.
Believe it. I do believe it. And got a couple of banters for you. One, personal appearance. I think that's going to come up a couple times today, but look at my crazy hair. What is going on here?
Is it the weather?
I don't know what it is. It's just standing straight up like a crazy, I don't know, like a cartoon, like I just saw a ghost.
It's an impactful coif. I think it's
I
think it's sharp.
Saturday, I'm going to spend $27 to look like you.
Yeah. Well, you come out of the house. I mean, my wife and I cut my hair, so I could just get the clippers and clean that up for you. But 5 minutes.
Do you do a Flowbee?
Oh no, I'm just going to put the guard on there, and I'm just going to shave it. It's like Full Metal Jacket if you saw that movie. Without the violence, it just
let's not say without the violence, but less violence. Less violent, slightly less violent. Okay, I'm going to do a technical trick for a second. You can see how clean it is. So one last piece of banter.
Yes.
Marley continues to make us nice artwork. And why am I showing you this? Because I have to break it to you.
To me?
To you, that we have to re-record our video for our leadership workshops introduction.
Okay, I can handle that.
Okay, we have new art, so it was time to do that.
We have to look sharp with the new background. By the way, my wife, one of our 2 listeners, said that she really liked the Dancing with the Stars background. So she said we look like we should be on television with that one.
Oh, do we want to switch to that then?
Not. I promised her I would convey that she thought that one was sharp. And snazzy. So I mean, occasionally we want to mix it up. We could.
Oh, we could mix it up. Yeah, I could do that. Okay. Well, Lee is asking us, and you can see it in his eyes. He's blinking this.
He's like, "Are you going to let me participate, or is it just a YouTube show and then it's over?"
Don't you, Lee? Ask us what our Work in Progress Leadership Workshop series are all about.
I was curious about that. What is the leadership?
Well,
is that leading the witness?
Series?
We used empirical data signals to determine team alignment with leaders, leadership, and mission. And we help you do it before it's too late. Interesting. Wow. So believe it or not, podcasting does not necessarily pay the bills around here.
Really?
So yeah. You not everybody knows that. Not everybody knows.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Did you know that anybody can have a podcast?
They just let anyone do it. You don't have to get a license or anything.
No. You don't have to prove anything. There's no education, no licensure. It's just
nothing.
If you got a computer and time.
And now we know why.
We will happily sell you one of those workshops for twice the value.
That explains a lot about when I just hit random podcasts and some of the things that come up. That makes a lot more sense now.
Well, we try to dispel the myth. Now you do need. This is in comedy. We call this a callback. You do need a license to cut hair, but you do not need a license to do this.
Yes, and I'm unlicensed, so I'm
Yeah,
cutting
yeah.
hair illegally.
Good to know.
Mm.
I'm John Lane,
I am Will Barfield,
and we are all
a
a work in progress.
Yes.
Lee,
To be
welcome
sure.
to our show.
Thank you.
This is pretty good, Will. We got to our guest by name within the first 3 minutes. We are getting better.
Constant improvement.
That's the name we should have had. Constant improvement.
No, I like work in progress.
All right, work in
Work
progress.
in progress is good. Yeah.
Yeah, Whipsters.
Well, Lee, welcome to Work in Progress. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, John. And thanks for having me on, Will. Gosh, where to start? So, yeah, my little
Oh,
LinkedIn
God, don't
thing
go
there
back too far.
Yeah, LinkedIn thing says engineering leader, author of Eason.blog. So yeah, I'm a tech leader based in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been in that area for my whole career and worked in a bunch of different companies and have lots of different interests. And I think I'm a lot more than an engineering leader, but that's kind of that's the LinkedIn thing, right? But I get into a lot of different hobbies and have lots of different things I like to spend time on. And I end up doing stuff like this a lot too, and talking a lot about how all those things sort of translate into being an engineering leader. It's kind of fun.
That's great. Now you left off the most important thing.
That I talk about
second most
DevOps and
important
leadership.
thing. One is you are one of the first, not the, but one of the first Who's Next guests to make it on. So I have to go back and look at our list. Doug Kaufman.
Doug Kaufman, yes.
Introduced you, and that was nice of him. So let's say hi to Doug.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for roping me into this. I appreciate it. And Doug's been a friend and a mentor to me for a long, long time.
He's a good dude, and he's an OG. If you're on before episode 15, you're OG for us.
So, wow.
Yeah. So that was one thing. What was the other thing you wanted to point out, John, that's important about Lee? Oh, the stash.
We're doing personal grooming, so let's get at it.
I feel like the stashes are kind of making a comeback, and I hope my friend Mary Thorne is watching this right now because she hates it almost as much as my own wife hates it. Mary was my work wife for a while. I really believe in it. I believe I draw strength from my mustache. It's like the hair of an old Greek hero or something.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Before we leave this slide real fast, what is the Eason.blog about? What are you blogging about on there?
Yeah. So another mentor of mine, Bob Galen, encouraged me years ago to do more writing. And so I have a personal blog. Just go to Eason.blog, where I write about all kinds of things related to tech leadership and wrote a couple articles recently that tie in some childhood lessons from growing up in a karate school to things that
karate school.
My dad ran a karate school for a long time, and growing up in that environment and then looking back on some of those things and sort of realizing, wow, there's a lot of lessons that stuck with me and tie in today with things I do in my job and with some of my colleagues. So that's been kind of fun. It's a creative outlet for me that also has some professional flair as well. I do some fun writing on the side too, just that's not professional and doesn't go on my blog, but I love writing. It's a lot of fun.
Good for you. Will, may I go on?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I was just sitting here thinking.
Great.
That takes a lot of time and effort for me.
Were you distracted by my mustache?
Your eyes were burning.
Yes, I was distracted by the mustache.
Something's going on.
I was actually thinking about the Karate Kid.
Well, all I could think about was, can we ask him about Cobra Kai? But I don't think that's what we're here to talk about.
He was not. I'm sure his father was not I'm sure he was a nice, kind karate school super boss owner.
Well, then I have to ask you: do karate men bleed on the inside, as Eddie Murphy said?
Yeah, we cry on the inside, bleed on the inside. Yeah.
All right. On with the show.
Yes.
So anyone who is watching this far knows that we talk about leadership traits under stress. That is our OG, our very first leadership workshop in the series. And we get there by having our guests take an OAD assessment. Will, how easy is it?
It's so easy I can do it.
Oh, I like that. We got to keep this in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Lee took the assessment like every guest before, and we have come up with his strengths and weaknesses. We cleverly turn them into superpowers and kryptonite, and then we get in it. So let's get in it. We always stop here coming in to say who is our guest in terms of our leadership style matrix. And today we have yet another socially oriented generalist and a negotiator. And Lee and I have almost the exact same pattern. His is a little more intense than I. I'll also say that, Lee, you have a very different pattern than one would expect from somebody in your job. And
Yes.
I hope we can get into that. So let's go through the
Wow, look at that spread.
treatment. Yeah, exactly. Socially oriented generalist. So we measured these constructs with the dots. We really need a laser pointer here. Just as an aside, there's no mouse for me to point the things that I'm talking about, which is you lose it. It goes there, then you can come here. So it isn't great. And they did a nice case. Oh, did we talk about the case study yet? I don't think we did. We'll have to do that next week. Take a
We
note.
can do that next week. Is the software, Lee? I'm
Yeah,
sure you figured
it's
that
the
out. But
software we did. They did a nice case.
it's an odd name software.
Okay, back
You know
to
what?
Lee.
Sticks.
So we look at his A assertiveness and E extroversion. Those are always looked at in relationship to detail orientation. When A is greater than D, you're a generalist. When E is greater than D, you're socially oriented, thus the upper right box. And then oftentimes, we don't always do this, but the distance between the dots shows intensity. And so you've got some nice intent. This is a nice, clear signal, but it's one who is often more in a sales role than a technical product leadership role. So talk about what it feels to be reduced to a two-dimensional table, but then maybe go into a little bit about how you see this as maybe unique for your field and whatnot.
Yeah, I find these exercises endlessly fascinating, right? We're trying to take something incredibly complicated, like a human being, and find some way to abstract away enough of the detail that we can kind of talk about patterns. The salesman thing is really interesting. Years ago, I was leading a DevOps transformation, and I read this quote. I think it was the CTO of Citrix or maybe Red Hat or somebody said. He said, "There's two kinds of people that work here. There's engineers and there's salespeople." And I remember reading that and thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not an engineer anymore. Does that mean I'm a salesperson?" And I felt real weird about it, like I needed to go take a shower or something.
Hey, now.
But I had to kind of rethink it a little bit, right? And the reality is I am a salesperson. Even as a people leader, a lot of my job is talking people into trying new things or taking a risk with a new role, and then helping coach them through how to be successful with it. And that's stuff that I do every day, and that's not engineering. And so, yeah, there's a lot of salesmanship involved in, I think, being a technology leader. Once you get your hands off the keyboard, you're spending most of your time talking to other people about that kind of stuff.
Right?
Yep, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I read an interesting quote too. It said it was talking about the root word of the word manage and the root word of manipulate is the same in Latin. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of tie-in as well.
Yeah.
Will, say something.
No, it's just I look at his readout there, and I expect the inverse.
Right. That's
when you're thinking technology leader, but like I mentioned earlier, Doug introduced Lee and I years ago, and he and I met on Fayetteville Street one day for a beer and just chatted for an hour. So just Doug thought we would benefit from knowing one another, and his so outgoing, and he was talking to me about some entrepreneurial ideas he had and some other things, and that typically the profile of someone who leads in his industry, in his type of role, much more introverted, much less assertive, and is wired differently. So, but to Lee's point, a leader of people is a seller, right? Same way that the teacher that stands at the front of the classroom is a seller. So you're constantly selling the company vision, this goal we're all working towards, retention of your people. You're never not selling, and his recognition of that probably makes him, a even better prepared leader than some of his peers who may be more technical and introverted by nature.
Yeah, I think that's a great wrap up. So
See, I was paying attention.
Yeah, no, I knew you were. I just wanted you to verbalize what you were thinking about, because this is a communication show.
I just was furrowing my brow and ruminating. I thought.
Oh, I know what you mean, but the rest of the group doesn't. The rest of our audience doesn't. So, Will, why don't you jump in here?
My turn.
Your turn.
So, Lee, these are the superpowers and kryptonites that come with the generic pattern readout of the builder negotiator. So anyone who lands in that red upper right quadrant is going to have the same general descriptors here. We're not going to stay on this slide long because John will get cranky. But in the superpowers and the kryptonite, is there one on each side that really stood out to you as accurate or on point that you'd like to talk about while we have a minute here?
I mean, I would say it nails it. Honestly, I think most people that know me would say, "Yep, that's Lee." The ones that really jump out to me, I think, are the persuasive one under superpowers, and obviously self-confidence. I don't struggle with that usually, but the persuasive one is fun because I did a part of getting hired here at Edward Jones. You go through a really big interview process, and there's a job simulation you go through. And part of the job simulation is an actual phone call with an actor in a scenario, in a fake business scenario. And then they interpret how you perform on that phone call. And the comment that they made in my assessment remarks was, Lee is a master convincer. I think they may have used the word manipulator, but it was an interesting comment from them, because I think it's supposed to be like the Kobayashi Maru, where you don't succeed in the task, and I did. And I think the actor was a little surprised that I was able to win. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I definitely
Nice.
think I have that power. Yeah.
How about
kryptonite?
And
on the kryptonite side, I definitely don't gravitate toward following up on stuff. I have in the course of a given day, I have dozens of conversations with people, and there's almost always some action item that comes out of those things, and I'm generally not. At the end of the day, the last thing I'm thinking about is, okay, let me review all my notes and follow up with people. Or at the beginning of the next day, I'm drinking my coffee thinking, oh, I got to follow up with so-and-so. I'm excited to do that. That's not where my energy goes. I prefer to let those people, I tell myself I'm delegating and I'm allowing those people to have space. But in reality, I think I just do sometimes kind of a poor job of circling back on a lot of the details and holding people accountable to what they said they were going to do. And that's a weak spot of mine.
Beautiful. Well, pressure's on. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of things to track and keep up with. If that's not a natural strength and we don't enjoy it, it's going to be very hard to attend to it. We tend to procrastinate or delay doing the things we don't enjoy.
And I'll just say, having the same trait pattern is, I have spent the last 20-something years building systems around me that capture things that remind me to do next steps, indirectly and directly, because they have to be done, and I'm the only one to do it. Second point I want to make is, so far you are our first guest to successfully bring up a shower and the Kobayashi Maru in one episode. And that wasn't even listed as one of your superpowers, and we may want to rethink that.
I do what I can.
Thank you.
All right. So, Don, we're going to roll now to the slides where Lee processed his results and readout and then commented on some things that he really wanted to discuss. Superpower is important. We're going to stay on this slide for a little bit. The juicy one is the kryptonite. That's what everybody enjoys. But here, Lee, you picked some, you made some notes. Walk us through the bullets here. And, I may lob a question or two in before we leave the slide.
Sure. Yeah. I think a byproduct of curiosity, like I have curiosity there, but when I think about adaptability, I think I feel like my adaptability is a byproduct of my curiosity. I'm always interested in getting better. I always sort of generally believe things can be better, and I put myself at the top of the list of things that could be better. And so when I've gotten feedback in the past, one of the bits of feedback I've gotten from leaders is, you walk out of a meeting with us and immediately put into practice what we just talked about. Like there's no lag time, and you're generally good at listening to feedback and changing. And that's not always true, but generally speaking, I think that's been a trait, and it's been helpful, right? Like, and we'll talk about this in a second, but almost to a fault, where I tend to be very adaptable to the people around me. And so I try to observe, my leaders and my colleagues, and try to adapt to what I think needs to be done. And another way people put that a lot of times is they fill gaps, right? So like you observe the system and you see what's missing, and you become that thing that's missing. You do that thing that you think needs to be done that nobody else is doing. I feel like I'm happiest and most energized and fulfilling my purpose on this earth when I'm standing in front of a couple of hundred people, and I can almost feel the energy of the room. In fact, like right now I'm in an empty conference room and it's killing me because there's nobody in here for me to vampire suck energy off of.
We're here.
But you're here. But I love being in front of a group of people, and over the years of speaking at conferences and being a leader and getting to talk in front of groups, I almost feel like it's palpable, like it's physical. I can feel sort of the energy of the group, and I can feel when the attitudes are shifting as I'm talking through things. And I feel like it's best when it's just off the cuff, natural. I love that moment. And then people tell me afterwards, it was such an awesome blah, blah, blah. And of course that strokes my ego and makes me feel good too. But that sort of time of being able to tap into that collective energy and inspire people, I absolutely love that. And so any chance I get to do it, I'm jumping at the opportunity. And it took me a long time to reconcile with that. Actually, I was very uncomfortable with it earlier in my life and my career. I had a very weird attitude about it. I didn't think I was worthy of it. And I remember feeling weird about people who would tell me that they were affected by things that I said. And in the early days, I thought, well, what's wrong with you? Like if you're that easily swayed, right, then that's your problem. Like there's some insufficiency in you. Don't put that on me. It took a while to like reconcile that we all have roles to play in this great thing called life, right? And I happen to have a passion about speaking in front of people, and other people love to be inspired, and we all need each other. And my part in that's not dirty or gross, and they're not weak for being swayed by it, just like I'm not weak for being swayed by the people that influence me. But it was a process for sure. I was very uncomfortable in the early days with it.
Couple things, Lee. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
One, I'm glad that you enjoy off the cuff and winging it, because that is 110% the theme of this show. John has great notes and prepares himself. I never have any idea what I'm doing until about 2:01 on the login here for the recording. So also, I read those descriptors there, and we're going to move on to the next slide after this question. And think about something you said earlier, right? About you're either, the two kinds of people that work here are either, engineer or developer or salesperson.
Yeah.
You mentioned needing a shower as a career salesperson. That resonated with me because I do shower occasionally.
Good.
Why do you think you didn't become a salesperson? Was there a seller in your life? Was there an influencer? Was it something that you concluded based on an interaction with someone? Why do you think that someone with your dynamism didn't end up just because a lot of people like you, sales just finds you, right? Like you just kind of stumble into that career and there you are. And you clearly, although you could have gone that route, probably perceived that you had the capacity to go that route, did not.
I think in my journey, when I was a kid, my dad used to tell me about the Renaissance men, and they were always held up as like the template that you should follow. You want to be a Renaissance man. You want to be a warrior poet. You want to be a builder. You want to make stuff, right? And that was something that from my early childhood days was sort of baked into my personality as like something to admire. So whenever I had the choice between like becoming a consultant or selling something and building something, I would rather build something.
Yeah.
So I want to put my skills to use constructing something that's I don't know. Just for me, that's what I've always valued, just more naturally, probably because of my dad.
Well, how important, great answer. How important is that early childhood conditioning, particularly,
Mm-hmm.
if we have involved, engaged parents, because we then have hero worship with moms and dads when we're young, because we assume they know everything. So if that was something that was baked into you constantly, then that absolutely manifested.
Yeah.
Kryptonite.
I probably
So
could have made a lot more money as a salesperson.
it's not too late. Come on over to
Yeah.
the dark side. Speaking of the dark side.
Nice segue, Will.
Yes.
Nice segue.
Write that one down. So we Sarah Glover, she was our in our first 5. She may have been number 3. She termed Kryptonite the shadow side, right? Like things are hard, things are challenging, things are moving fast, things are stressful, and those characteristics that are our superpowers as Renaissance men and Renaissance women and Renaissance people become weaknesses, and they begin to manifest themselves in ways that make what we do for a living, what we do professionally, challenging. You made some notes here too. Let's talk about the kryptonite, and when the police lights on Lee and the pressure's up and we're sweating. Why do these things pop out?
Yeah, I mean, on that vein of these, I think the confrontational note is the one that pops out to me immediately, and this is a piece of feedback I've gotten multiple times that I hate getting. But I've been told that in times when I'm giving direct feedback, people can feel very intimidated. And I'm too intense. Maybe I make too much eye contact or something. I think as a person who I get very passionate about what I think is true in the world, and when I'm talking to someone who may not be aligned to that, they may feel threatened by how passionate I am about it, right?
Yeah.
And those things aren't meant to make someone feel uncomfortable, but I definitely have, and I've gotten that feedback before. It's something I try to be on guard against, but I fail at it sometimes. It's discouraging when I do.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to convey a message, that you're passionate about it, that intensity is going to come through. I think, as leaders, and I'm speaking solely for myself here. This is not advice, but understanding how something is going to land with the other party. My wife, who is the owner of this company and my business partner, she has a great skill for slipping other people's shoes on and helping me see perspective, because I've got that intensity as well, and it shows I'm not in the same quadrant as you and John, but I'm upper, and that assertiveness leads for me over extroversion, and you've got to be able as a leader, I think, to you imagine the perspective of the person you're communicating with and how they're going to receive your message, and make sure that it's going to be received the way you intended it, even though it may mean you have to change the trajectory from which you launch, that communication.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And my journey, I would definitely say that this is one of those areas where I think we learn and get better at emotional intelligence. It's not like you're imbued with some level of emotional intelligence and then that's it. It's something that you can work on. And I've worked on it. And again, I don't think I nail it every time, but I'm definitely a lot better than I used to be. And even recently, I had a conversation with a female colleague, and she talked to Ken some weeks or months later, and she said, "You yelled at me last time we talked." And I was like, I replayed the conversation in my head. And I was like, I absolutely did not yell. I know I didn't. I never do that. And talking through it more, it was just the directness of the comments, making eye contact. Yeah. She felt like it was an aggressive comment that was made. And I was like, well, I certainly didn't mean for it to be like that. I talked to my wife about it. I was really upset,
Yeah.
and several of my other female colleagues were like, yeah, I mean, that's what it's like for us. Sometimes when there's a man talking to us that directly, it can feel like you're getting yelled at. And I was like, oh my God. Like, okay, well, I'm still learning.
That's
Still a work in progress.
That's great self-awareness.
Nice.
Oh, work in progress. I stepped on it. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Will and we have a piece of communication coming out tonight where we talk about, and this will be 2 weeks old, so I hope you enjoyed it. Oftentimes in work environments or outside of work environment, when there's a disagreement, the friction comes from the context, not the content. And so the context, the way you were presenting your point of view to the colleague you just mentioned, froze her. She probably couldn't even absorb the point you were trying to make because of how she felt it was being presented to her. So one of the things we teach broadly, we coach maybe more than teach, is to understand folks on the leadership matrix and how they typically like to communicate and consume information. So one of the ones is folks like you and I on the right. We're like sellers and we're persuasive and we love talking to folks. People on the other side, the more technical side, you know what they hate? Being sold. And so when there's all this selling coming at them, they may 100% agree with you, but they're going to lock down because of how it's presented to them. So I think that's definitely something for all of us to learn.
Before we leave the slide, John, anything else on here, Lee, you want to talk about? That was a great point, and we generated some awesome content off of that. But anything else on here that you or your mustache want to cover?
The only other one I think it's worth calling out really is this driven to transform things, sometimes destructively, because that's linked directly to not being content too. I heard on another podcast, the lady that founded Dress for Success, great speaker.
Yeah.
She made a comment about how she has to be fixing something all the time, and if she's not fixing something, she'll break something, so she'll have something to fix. And that really resonated with me. I was like, oh my God, I do that too. If I'm not in the process of rebuilding something, right? And another analogy I use is that I really suck at driving a bus, and we need lots of people to drive buses, but I would rather strip the bus down to the axles, reimagine what it needs, get a new transmission, a new engine, build it all the way up, and do all kinds of cool stuff to it, and then drive it around the block once, and then I'm done. I don't want to drive it anymore. And so, to your point earlier, I think one of the things I've had to learn how to do is hire people who are really good at filling in those gaps that I have, who are excellent at doing the things that I don't gravitate towards. So they are more detail oriented. They're very good at steady state, more gradual change, whereas I gravitate toward more destructive, like wholesale change. And so that helps find a balance. Yeah, exactly.
Great point. Well, thank you for the open sharing, the vulnerability. That's the key to this show, right? And why it's so much fun is we get leaders on here who, talk openly about the OAD assessment, the results that came out of it, and what it means to them and how it makes them feel. On this slide, can we get into a little bit, what you gathered from this experience, taking the assessment, which is fast, the readout, which tends to be, pretty doggone accurate. Maybe you can touch on that, but then the exchange with John and then this conversation today where there's some things that you gathered and analyzed and studied that you can apply to work, perhaps even home or social, but particularly in the professional environment. Did going through this exercise with us and guesting on this podcast, do some good for you?
It's been a great experience. Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys having me on and spending all the time going through all the results with me. I think to me, the OAD is a efficient tool. It didn't take as much effort as some of the other ones that I've done, and it was very revealing. And we have work, home, and social on here, but as you guys know, we don't get to draw lines around those things. The person that I am at work is the same person I am at home and with my friends. There's not different versions of me. And so, there's a lot of my personal struggles with my wife or with my family, my lack of patience, my lack of contentment, my desire to sort of make things better. I have to have outlets for those things. I have to find constructive outlets for them. And if I don't, then they manifest themselves in really negative ways. So I think the OAD is one of the better tools I've used to kind of help find the link between all those things.
Thank you for saying that. And can we just suggest podcasting is a great outlet?
Yeah. Okay. I heard you don't even have to get a license or anything. It's like basically anybody can do it. No training or skill.
Literally anybody.
Oh, amazing.
Lee, thank you. Always love seeing you.
Buddy.
Appreciate that you are making time for us after a couple of weeks of travel. Great to see you. Let's get together when you're back in Raleigh. Will's buying, because I'm John Lane.
Oh, totally. And I'm Will Barfield. I'm loaded, apparently.
And we are
a work
in
in progress.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good week. Bye.
See you soon, Lee.
Thank you.